Now that Halloween's over, what do you do with all that candy? The idea was simple, at least at the start. Brian from Elementary Brewing Co. and myself would each pick our favorite candy, and then we would make a beer inspired by the other's choice. Okay, maybe not that simple. And little did I realize that this tiny piece of candy would send me down a wormhole, filled with a ton of challenges along the way, all leading up to the tasting with Brian in a month, where either I'll honor his favorite candy or be swimming with the fishes. Swedish fish. You've probably had them before, and honestly I had no idea it was anyone's favorite candy, but despite what you might think, the flavor is not actually cherry. It's something called Lingonberry. And right at the start, I was faced with a couple of questions. 1. Would I use actual Swedish fish, or go for the flavor using other ingredients? And 2. What style of beer would best highlight this candy? After watching a video from Man-Made Mead, where he made an alcohol from actual Swedish fish, I determined it'd probably be better to use the real flavor of Lingonberry. If you've ever gone to IKEA, you might recognize this Lingonberry jam, and that's what I determined would be the inspiration for this beer. Lingonberry is actually a popular fruit in Sweden, but it's something that I've never really tasted living in the States. And also, I don't really live close to an IKEA, so to the internet I went. And eventually I stumbled upon Lingonberry powder. My thought in the moment would be, oh, this will work great, and easily dissolve into the beer. Plus, it's a big bag, so the $30 price tag is no big deal. I'll only need a little bit. Both of those thoughts would prove to be wrong. But I hid by and waited for it to arrive. As for the beer style, for some reason I was fixated on it being a sour. I thought the berry flavor and tartness would just work, despite Swedish fish actually being quite sweet. I don't really know. This whole thing really had me thrown for a loop. But I did just get some Sourvisiae yeast recently, and I've been wanting to give it a go. It's one of those yeasts that sours the beer as it ferments, making a super easy sour beer. So this beer would be like a Lingonberry Berliner Weiss. Sounded pretty good. With somewhat of an idea together, I got to brewing. Shout out to Clawhammer Supply for being a partner of the channel. Today I'm brewing on the 10 gallon 120 volt system, but as always you can brew this on any system you like. The Clawhammer just makes it easy. Link in the description if you're interested to know more. The grain bill consisted of 69% two-row, nice, 28% white wheat, and finally a touch of roasted barley to help aid us in the color of red. I used about 3%. And if I really wanted to make this more red, I probably should up this just a little bit. But our friend Lingonberry powder will help with that too. More on that in a sec. I mashed at 150 Fahrenheit for 45 minutes, pulled the grains, and brought to a 30-minute boil. At the top of the boil, I added 0.25 ounce of Warrior for 11 IBUs. Just wanted something with a clean bitterness, but I didn't need too much. Finally at the flame out, I decided to add in some of that Lingonberry powder. And remember how big I thought that bag was? Yeah, I need to read things better. Am I the only one that buys stuff online and it almost always seems to be way smaller than I thought? Anywho, I decided to add half of this bag now at flame out, which was about 2 ounces.
I have no idea what this stuff actually tastes like, so let's try a little bit first. Super tart, but has that like fruity cherry note that Swedish fish kind of have, so I think what I'm gonna do is blend this up with some wort and then add it in as the wort's chilling down. We'll see.
By the way, as far as gravity goes, this is a pretty small beer, with an OG around 1.033, and I'm pretty sure the powder did add some sugars. Eventually, I decided to move on and chilled the beer down and transferred it into a fermenter, which is one of the highlights of this brew day. This fermenter was sent to me by Anvil, the partner for this portion of the video. This is their Crucible, conical 7-gallon fermenter. Having been a fan of Anvil's bucket fermenter for years, I was super excited to give this a try, and it didn't disappoint. All the great quality that I got from my bucket fermenter, but with a ton of nice upgrades, like the tri-clamp and the sample port for maximum customization. Big thank you to Anvil for sending this over and supporting the channel. And if you're in need for a good conical at a reasonable price, be sure to check out the link in the description. With the beer in, I added the Sourvisiae yeast. I fermented this at 67 Fahrenheit for 1 week. And after that week, I decided to take a taste, and wow, it was like getting kicked in the face by a warhead. Intensely sour, and really not that much Lingonberry flavor. I would later find out that Sourvisiae is a machine at making extreme sour beer, and if you want to dial it back, you need to co-pitch with something like US-05 or another ale yeast. Oops. But it was done fermenting, and I thought maybe it would just mellow with some age. So I transferred it into a keg and let it condition for a week. But even with some time, it was still just as intense, and there was no way I could send this to Brian. So now begins the saving face portion of this brew. I took some experience from my cider making and decided to back sweeten the beer, thinking bringing some sugars in would help counter the sourness. That process involves adding potassium sorbate and sodium metabisulfite. These two work together to keep the yeast asleep, and they won't re-ferment any sugars that I add. And honestly, I wasn't really sure that this would work with this yeast, but I gave it a go. A day after adding those two products, I then decided to add the rest of the lingonberry powder. I boiled some water and then added it to the powder to dissolve. It was a mess, but I tried my best to get it all mixed in and then added it to the keg. And that certainly helped with the color, making it more of a pinkish red, and slightly helped with the flavor, but it still was super tart. So my last ditch effort was to add sugar. I measured out a ½ pound of sugar and dissolved it with more boiling water, and then added it to a keg. And right about here is where I realized I messed up.
Oh!
What can I do? Towel?
Towel.
Okay, grab a towel, but a towel that we don't care about because it's red.
Oh!
But wow, I'm pretty proud of how fast I moved. So what happened here was that the sugars weren't fully dissolved. And since the beer was already carbonated, all those sugars reacted, creating a ton of nucleation sites, making the beer foam up everywhere. But it could have been a lot worse if I wasn't so fast. Thankfully, the beer was stabilized, so oxidation isn't really a concern. But man, this beer was starting to really get to me. I just had to make things more complicated than they needed to be. But for now, I'll just take my anger out on this bag of Swedish fish and move on. I packaged up the beer and then sent it off to Brian, hoping and praying I didn't just ruin any chances of being his friend. Let's go ahead and take a sip. Warning, it is pretty sour, so I hope you like sour.
It smells like jam, man.
Yeah.
It smells super good. Oh, yeah. No, that's not too sour at all.
No? You like it?
No way. Oh, that's good.
To me, it's very tart.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I like that. That's like jammy. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that's good. There you go.
By the way, this is only like 3%.
Dude, it tastes like Berliner Weiss to me. It's a Lingonberry Berliner Weiss. That's really good.
Nice.
I could drink that all day. It does have some of that back end sourness, though.
Yeah.
It is tart, but it's not bothersome tart. I like it.
Okay.
It's like a candy tart.
Yeah, yeah. The yeast that I used was Sourvisiae. Have you used that?
Okay,
Yeah.
I have not. I've used Philly Sour, but not Sourvisiae. This one's way more sour than Philly Sour.
Yeah, it gets really tart. What I know now after brewing this is that I guess if you co-pitch Sourvisiae with like a USO5, it kind of mellows out the sourness.
It'll balance it out, yeah. It still feels like it's got a decent amount of body in there, though. Like it didn't dry it out too much, I don't think.
Well, it actually did, because it went like super low, and it was even more tart, so I decided to back sweeten this with more lingonberry powder.
Okay, that's probably a good call on that then.
Because it was like twice as tart as it is now.
Yeah. Oh, no, this is good.
But I do think it's like one of those things where like, you take a few sips, you kind of get acclimated to it. Especially...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm a sour candy fan. So.
Okay, nice. Well, good.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Nice job, dude. Nice job.
Do you think it tastes like Swedish fish is the real question?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't think it tastes like Swedish fish. I think it tastes like a jam, like a lingonberry jam. If they made like a Sour Patch version of Swedish fish, this would be it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, Brian, I mean, it's not exactly a beer that I am happy with, but I'm glad that you enjoy it. Overall, it was fun. It was a fun experience. I appreciate the challenge, and we should do it again sometime.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. Huge thank you to Brian from Elementary Brewing Co. I had an absolute blast doing this crazy challenge with you, man. Go over and subscribe to his channel right now. And if you want to see the beer that he made using my favorite candy, click on this video.